Aloha, friends. This episode of The Voyagers is sponsored by Jonathan Udis at Maui Dream Properties. You might not know this, but my wife and I are looking to buy a house on Maui in the very near future, and there's only one person I'm going to call when we hit the go button. Jonathan Udis, Realtor and Real Estate Advisor at Maui Dream Properties. You can call a dozen realtors and you're not going to find a more trustworthy and motivated realtor than Jonathan. He works to make people's real estate dreams come true. Whether buying, selling, or investing, Jonathan serves his clients with passion, enthusiasm, and excellence. I've said it before, and if you've ever purchased or sold a house, you know it's true. In this business, trust is everything. Jonathan is a man of integrity, and you can trust him to put your needs first. So if you're thinking about moving to one of the most beautiful islands in the world, check out MauiDreamProperties.com and drop Jonathan a hello and get started on making your dream a reality. I'm David Glenn Taylor, and this is the Voyagers Podcast.
6 a.m. is usually way too early for most places, but not when you're in Cappadocia. Turkey, you're officially country number 84. Mozambique, you're country number... can't remember. I've just arrived in Bolivia, one of two landlocked countries in the whole of South America, with a population of over 11 million people that speak over 36 different languages, only one of which is Spanish. Bolivia, 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 you're officially country number 104.
Ah, the bagpipes. Love them or hate them, they are one of the most recognizable instruments on the planet. Personally, I love them. Before I met today's guest, I believed I knew something about the bagpipes. They're a Celtic instrument, right? From Scotland, my hereditary homeland. And according to the movie Braveheart, they play them at funerals and before battles. Turns out that's not it exactly. By the way, that's our guest today. Ross Jennings playing the pipes as he literally walks down the center aisle aboard a flight on the way to another country where he will play his fabled instrument and share it with the world on his YouTube and wildly popular Instagram account. Ross is on a simple mission to play the bagpipes in every sovereign nation on the planet. When the pandemic hit, he was well on his way, but as you'll hear, his thoughts on travel in a post-COVID world should give us all pause and help us reflect on how to be good global citizens after going through what we've just gone through. But as he sees it, music is still the universal language that crosses boundaries and cultures. And the bagpipes, it turns out, are leading the way. You got to first explain to me the accent. You do not have a typical Scottish accent. Are you Scottish?
So that's a very good question. My mother's family are Scottish and my father's family are Irish. But I grew up in China.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I was also sent to school in England, which is why I sound very English.
Yeah, no, I was listening. I was watching a bunch of your videos, and I've been following you actually for some time on Instagram and just really enjoying it because my mother's family's from Scotland, a couple generations back, but the McMurray family and from north of Edinburgh, and we travel in Scotland a lot. That's kind of our vacation spot. So we go from Hawaii, because we would go find the rain, and we like the rain and the mud and the whole thing, So,
The life must lead to have to want rain. Hawaii, aren't there some places in Hawaii that have the highest rainfall per ever?
Yeah, actually, I can see it out my window. Actually, the rainiest spot, the second rainiest spot in the whole world is right.
Oh, wow.
Eyau Valley, right there. Yeah, and they have the coast, and because of it's the most isolated land on the planet, right? It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so the windward, leeward side, which you have a little bit in, Scotland, East Coast, West Coast, understands kind of a bit of the island life a bit. And the Hebrides certainly understand, if you're in the Hebrides, so everything is about which direction the rain is hitting, right? So so I'll have friends regularly planning a trip to Hawaii. In fact, just a couple of days ago, a friend of mine from Alaska was like, "Oh, I'm so sad. I saw the weather report for the whole time we're going to be there. It's going to rain the whole time we're there." And I was like, "Well, where are you staying on the island?" And they're like, "We're in Kihei." I'm like, "It's not going to rain in Kihei. You're going to be all right." And she was like, "Oh, really?"
It is one of those things, isn't it? Like you only have
Yeah.
weather thingies in one location, and
Right.
it might say it's raining all day, but actually like it just rains.
Yeah,
for 2 hours.
it makes no sense in Hawaii. The show is just all people that I find amazing and interesting, and it's really following my own curiosities more than anything else. So, and the bagpipes, of course, are the thing that I find most fascinating.
If
Yeah.
you want, I've got my kilt here. So
Oh, there you go. Is that from so that's from your father's family?
No, it's from my mother's family.
Oh, that's right. Your mother's a Scottish family.
Yeah, my father. Although that's a good
Ireland
question.
has pipes, though, right?
Yes, they have. There is tartan culture, but the thing is that it's kind of adopted, and it's interesting how people have certain memory pegs, and there's visual aids that associate with different things. So, like, as soon as people see the kilt, people go, "Oh, Ireland," which is very interesting. Yeah. Whilst obviously it's not, and the kilt is obviously conspicuously Scottish, but it has been adopted by Ireland over the years. Tartans, though, in Scotland are related to clans, whilst in Ireland they're more related to counties.
Oh,
so
interesting.
County Kerry will have a tartan, but that wasn't traditionally really like it might have been a thing, but it wasn't documented in a specific way, like the tartan register is in Scotland. Like there's a book of tartans that are registered in Scotland where you can go through and be like, okay, that is the official Stuart or Taylor tartan or etc. tartan. Yeah. And then that's kind of how it works, whilst in Ireland it is a bit different.
There's a Taylor tartan in Scotland?
I don't know, I made that up.
Oh, okay, because that's fantastic. I was like, I'm not saying because
that's why you put a Taylor, aren't you?
Right. Well, I've tracked down the McMurray, and then the lineage of the McMurrays, because the McMurrays are different. They're interesting because there's the Murray clan, and they're loosely related to the Murray clan, but it kind of goes all over. I've done all what a lot of us Americans do. We track we're obsessed with tracking our family history. We're also displaced here.
I found your Taylor tartan. It was designed in 1955 by two outstanding authorities, Miss Margaret McDougall of the Inverness Museum and Lieutenant Colonel I.B. Cameron Taylor. There you go.
Oh, nice. Fantastic. Almost all of my descendants are from the UK, and mostly from Scotland. And I have one Irish descendant that's like 6 generations back, one Irish woman that married. So they were down in what's the area down there, kind of close to Ireland?
Southwest Scotland.
Galloway.
Oh my God, yeah, that's where my family's from.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I have a lot of family.
No one knows Galloway.
From the Galloway region, yeah. And I haven't traveled much in the Galloway region. Mostly when we've come there, we've gone up into the Highlands and we spent a lot of time in the Hebrides and the islands and that kind of thing. But next time I'm there, I'm gonna go out. My brother's gonna be there this summer he's gonna be out at Iona doing a pilgrimage thing out in Iona. So, but
Southwest Scotland is truly, I often think it's a bit forgotten, which is good and bad,
right?
Because it is, honestly, the infrastructure there is, I mean, not that it's not the best, but just there's only one road which goes through beautiful rolling hills, but it's not quite as sexy and appealing, it seems, compared to the Highlands. The Highlands have a certain ring, but if you're like, oh, let's go to the lowlands, people are like, nah.
Yeah, very interested in the lowland culture, and especially from a historical standpoint. But I've actually been getting into the lowland whiskeys lately and trying to drink more, find more of that.
Well, you should definitely try, if you haven't already, Annandale whiskey.
Annandale.
They sort of market themselves as the first distillery in Scotland, but they're not really. But it's the first that you drive past if you're driving into Scotland from England.
Oh wow!
And they are they're in Dumfries and Galloway in Annan. There's a couple who have bought it basically privately with all their money, and that's been their baby and project for the past 10 years.
I'm on it. We actually had a Burns night here, and that we did a wonderful big whiskey tasting, some of that. And I had Glenn Kinchy for the Lowland representative. This will have to be next year for sure.
Oh my gosh, I've got an idea. Do you know what? If you haven't thought about it already, and if you really love whiskey and have got a whiskey, like a bunch of mates, you can buy your own barrel of whiskey. And it's not, especially with Annandale, it's not hugely expensive. The expense comes when you bottle it, because that's when you pay tax.
Sure.
But you can buy your own barrel for like between £3,000 and £5,000.
Oh wow.
Which, like, if you're splitting that with 10 people and like doing it as like a mates thing or a family thing or a legacy thing, like that's not too bad. But then you get screwed when you try and you bottle it in 5 years time, 10 years time, etc.
Right.
But yeah, the reason I say that is because I was very lucky that my parents decided to do that a couple of years ago and bought a barrel from Annandale, because it's just down the road.
Are you in Galway right now? Where are you located right now?
I'm in Guatemala City.
You're in Guatemala City. Are you, so as a part of, you live there, or is this part of your traveling right now?
Not traveling at all. Haven't done since March, start of March last year, and won't be. I don't know. I've taken the decision that even this year will be a write-off when it comes to travels, because I feel weird a bit promoting travel, and you get the vibe. So home, it's kind of been home since July 2019, Guatemala City, because of my partner's working at the international school here. So now we are like official residents, which is great.
Sure.
And I'm so lucky, and I'm so grateful to be able to be here. I'm not gonna lie. Escaping a British winter. Guatemala is just delightful. So I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful. Honestly, I wake up every day and I look outside and I'm like, oh my God, this is so wonderful and so beautiful. Thank you.
So is your partner a teacher?
Yes, teachers at the I suppose it's the American International School of Guatemala.
And what are you doing for employment then right now? Are you just bagpiping around Guatemala City, or what are you doing?
Various spots in the city.
Right. Just who is that guy?
Everyone's like, wait, you again. Nah, I actually, that's an interesting point, because I always feel a bit uncomfortable busking. Being a street artist in countries that are not my own, basically. I feel like you're almost taking business away from a local musician, and I always feel a bit funny about that. So if I am ever busking or playing on the street, it's always totally for free, and it's like just so I can have a cool exchange with somebody. My work though, I about 6 months ago, I started working with an online academy called the NAS Academy, and we teach video creation, social media stuff. And so it's totally digital and online, and we teach people from all around the world. So like it could be Mexico and Guam. I don't know why that came to mind. So all the way through to like Kenya, Bangladesh, India, and the Philippines. Everybody. It's pretty cool. I can be based anywhere, just need internet connection. So.
And you're teaching pipes?
No. It's an online video academy.
Oh, so you're teaching how to like video production and stuff and that kind of thing?
Yeah, scripting, video editing. It's fairly, I wouldn't say it's basic, but it's just introductory skills to like mid-advanced. Like you wouldn't do it if you were wanting to go and work for a film production company in an advanced level. You might do it as an entry. Our tagline is like, we are creating creators. And it's great fun. I love it. And for now, it's my travel, because I get to meet people. I've got a class right now, and a huge range of individuals from like Palestine, Saudi Arabia to Syria, Mexico, someone from Jamaica, etc. It's pretty cool.
Incredible, man. That's amazing. Actually, that leads to kind of one of the questions I have in terms of like, your actual travel. I mean, you obviously have a YouTube channel and you have the Instagram account and the people that were following you on there, but the quality of the video is really high. I mean, the photography and the video stuff is so stunning. And are you doing the whole thing on your own? Do you set up tripods and stuff, or do you have a team?
God, no. I wish I did.
Right?
No, it was all alone. I mean, as you know, like even with a laptop and a camera on your phone, it does wonders.
Yeah.
All you need, and this is literally what we teach, like you don't need a fancy device to tell a good story.
Right.
It helps having good audio. So sorry if this is a bit echoey, everybody.
It's okay.
I'm not practicing what I preach. But yeah, it helps having good kit. Yeah, for sure. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a good story to tell. And I've got there. Like, I mean, I even look back at my videos from a year ago and I'm like, God. And as every step and every mistake you make, you improve on. But when I first started traveling, like 6-7 years ago, the journey started in 2014. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, truly, I was like recording everything and anything, because just in case I was going to start doing videos. But I never made the time to edit the videos. And it was only since silver lining, or on hindsight, the lockdowns of 2020 that gave me the time to start coming up with a bit of a formula of how I would edit and create stories, because I didn't want to vlog, but I also didn't want to, I wasn't sure how I was going to script and create my videos. And I'm starting to get there with a sort of structure. But it helps having a camera and a tripod. And I met my other half traveling with the bagpipes, and he's been pretty good from the second half of the journey onwards.
Now, he's not a piper. Where's he from?
He's from Pittsburgh.
No kid, he's American.
Yes. So, and do you know what? The cool fact about Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh is the reason why, supposedly, Americans, or people from North America, I should say, call Edinburgh.
Of course.
And the reason why, supposedly, is because, well, the Burgh spelling is butter, as you know, butter. Yeah. But lots of people, because they're from North America, may be more used to saying Pittsburgh.
Completely.
And over time, that would have been what it would have come from Pittsburgh, or the Fort Pitt, because a burr is a fort, I think, from Old English or Old Scottish. Right. And it would have been Fort Pitt, Pitt Burgh, and then that would have evolved to Pittsburgh. So I think that's what North Americans call it, Edinburgh, when they first arrive.
Sorry about that. we call lots of things. One of my favorite things the first time I took my kids to Scotland, I've got 3 boys, right? So my wife and I have 3 sons, and first time I took, and my oldest he's out of the house in college and everything. And so the 2 youngest came with us to Scotland. And my favorite thing was watching my kids just wrestle with the accent and trying to understand and then try and figure it out. And I would catch my youngest, especially, who likes to try accents and he's got a big imagination, and he loves trying to do the acting and impersonating and everything. And I absolutely love it. I adore it. And I'm fully aware, I've traveled extensively around the world. And I'm fully aware of the American reputation for just butchering every piece of language and culture.
Tomato, there's different ways of saying everything.
There is, absolutely.
Like, as long as you're going in there goodwill. I always get a cringe when I hear someone tell someone off for something, especially when they don't know in the beginning. You can say, oh, by the way, it's maybe not a burg, it's more of a borough. That word.
Right.
Then someone snaps and goes, you're like, oh, that's so unnecessary. There's no need to be.
Right.
So like standoffish. But
Fantastic.
even there's plenty of words in Scotland because I didn't grow up there. It has become my home, and I proudly say that I am Scottish, but I suppose I emphasize the ish bit. I'm not just Scottish. Yeah. I'm British and Irish too. So lots of words like Scots words and sayings I wouldn't have grown up with, but I have learnt. I definitely don't know any Gaelic. I wish I did. That would be so cool. Yeah, that's all to come, and I'm excited for that. Being able to call Edinburgh home is giving me the opportunity to learn more about Scotland, the history, and although I'm now in Guatemala City, obviously, a bit distant, a little while, but when you're taking it, I suppose you get this from where you were brought up and born, etc. Sometimes the further you are away from maybe home, the more you become attached to it, and the more you appreciate.
Who first introduced you to pipes? I'm assuming that would be on your mother's side.
I suppose, I don't actually know. I don't have a solid memory of like the first time I would have heard the bagpipes online, because I suppose they might have just been around and about. When you are Scots or Irish or Americans or Indians, wherever you're, when you're out of your home country or maybe place of birth, you're kind of told you come from locations. So you then start amplifying those traditions. So I was almost told that like, you're Scottish or you have Irish roots, you need to do Irish things, you need to do Scottish things. Right. And then when I was sent to school, I was sent to boarding school, I was given the opportunity to learn the pipes. And that was cool because they wanted to kick off a pipe band. So they were giving us the opportunity to learn bagpipes for free, which is really cool because all these extra, like most places, if you're doing extra stuff, you usually have to put the bill. But this was an opportunity to do it for free. And for some reason, I mean, it wasn't the coolest thing to do at school, but no one wanted to do it in my year apart from me. So out of like 200 people, I was the only person. I just thought, how bizarre! Like, it's free to do, man. Just try it out.
Wow.
Like anything, up and down journey. It wasn't the easiest. I wouldn't say I'm naturally talented at anything, but I started it. Had the most wonderful bagpipe teacher, Bernie Aiken, and it was thanks to her. And I think the opportunities that I had as a teenager from piping, that I kept on chipping away at it, but then went to university and I did the stupidest thing because I was at University of Edinburgh and I didn't pipe at all for like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Just so silly. And that's basically my bagpipe journey. But I just always loved the sound of it. And I remember the first moment that I heard the pipes. It was a Monday morning or maybe a Friday morning school assembly. I had just turned 14. And then in marches my bagpipe teacher to be this wonderful lady called Bernie Aiken, who I've mentioned. He was just such a character, and she had a kilt on. She was all full regalia. And I was just sat there thinking, this is awesome. It is so cool. And I in that moment, I was like, I have to play this instrument. Have to play it. And it was music to my ears, literally, when they were like, we'll give you a bunch of free lessons. Yes.
That's amazing. I have the same fascination with the sound of the bagpipe. I always have. Even when I was a little kid, I heard a record at my grandparents' house that had bagpipes on it, and I was dumbstruck. I thought it was the most beautiful sound, and I found that to be somewhat universal. You've traveled in now 100 and how many countries?
105.
You played the pipes in 105 countries. Have you found in your own experience that sound is universally kind of just attractive that way?
It really is. Music in across the board, your tone of voice, things like that, but music in particular. I know it's a cheesy and a bit of a cliche thing to say, but like it's the international language of love. Is that what they say?
But there are people that like hate the sound of bagpipes. They cringe at it, right?
or maybe not just bagpipe, but music in general, and then like
Yeah.
bagpipe roots, yes, it tends to stir a certain type of emotion. I would say 95% positive,
Right.
because but not just positive. If you go down if you broke that up, it would be like, or just like total admiration to like the end of the spectrum, which is just like, what the,
Right,
it
right.
is so aggressively loud, but I
Yeah.
think I like it
Yeah.
because you're smiling and you're wearing a skirt, so I'm not
Sure.
being attacked. Only in a small genre, I've had like fear and anger, but it only tends to be on one end of the spectrum. Either that, or it's like, I want to fight, but in a good way.
Right. That's fascinating. Wow. So 105 countries. I mean, obviously, the obvious question is like, what stands out? You know, what nations do you look back on and you just go, that place just really stayed in me?
Scotland, obviously, gotta say that.
But was that like the first one? You're like, I better just play
Yeah,
the pipes here.
I always say my first country officially as part of the journey was Tunisia,
Oh,
which
interesting.
is, if you're listening, is a small country in North Africa, in between Libya and Algeria. And I had a friend from university who had just moved there to study Arabic, and I had booked a flight already. And then after booking the flight, this idea to do this kilted music adventure blossomed and was formed and created. And I thought, brilliant. I'm just going to use this opportunity to kick off my bagpipe adventure. And it couldn't have been more perfect.
Wow.
So many wonderful reasons, like even getting on the flight, I was nervous because I'd never traveled to North Africa. I don't speak French, which is often one of the languages spoken there. My Arabic was basic at school. I made sure to learn a bit of Arabic just because it's kind of one of those languages I think we should have a basic understanding of. And then there's Tunisian Arabic, none of which I speak, but I got on the plane, I sat next to this guy, I'll never forget his name, Mahmoud El Arbi. And he was I swapped so he could sit next to his wife. So there's a bit of complication there. And he was so lovely that after it, he gave me his details. He said, if you need anything, let me know in Tunisia. I want you to have a wonderful time. I work in London and I want you to have a great adventure here. And I told him I played the bagpipes and he was like, what? Mashallah, this is awesome. Turns out he owned a football club in Tunisia in the south. And I was like, what?
Oh my God.
I ended up playing at their like gala dinner a week or two later.
No way.
But on top of that, it was just too perfect. Like all these wonderful things. Like my friend was living there. I got to meet so many Tunisians rather than just being like meeting other travelers. The national instrument of Tunisia, also the bagpipes.
What?
Man, yes, I know. So I was like, what? Boxes being ticked left, right, and center. And it was just the most fantastic, eye-opening, wonderful 2 weeks to kick off this kilted adventure.
Oh my gosh. Now I have to do like some reading. I got to figure out how that happened.
I know, right?
Oh,
so
incredible.
Essentially, the reason why bagpipes are so familiar and popular around the world is I truly believe they're the most international instrument for many reasons. They are the national instrument of Scotland, yes, but they're not just Scottish. And I think that's something important that lots of pipers do learn and do know, but lots of people who are very proud of being Scottish and know the bagpipes from a bit of a distance, maybe don't appreciate or haven't learned. Bagpipes have been around for thousands of years and they come from the Middle East, and then through time and trade, etc., made their way to the United Kingdom. And there's lots of different theories as to how and why, but one of the popular ones is essentially Romans invaded the United Kingdom, British Isles, brought with them the bagpipes, and then they went north, and then Scotland decided to make them really loud and big.
No kidding.
Loud and big.
Where are you going to go next?
I've definitely seen other travelers and creators start traveling, and like power to them. Some of them might have to because of work reasons or financial reasons, fair enough. But I just feel like sometimes if you are in that position, you have the people look up to what you do, and if you're setting a bad example, I mean,
it's someone insensitive. I would see it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's the frustrating side of things is that lots of these locations and countries are crying out for tourism, absolutely crying out for tourism.
Hawaii, we're in tourism. Have you piped in Hawaii yet?
Not yet, no. I remember learning about Hawaii from a very young age in a geography project because I was like obsessed with volcanoes.
Right.
And I did a project on, I'm going to butcher the name, so I apologize. Is it Kilauea?
Yeah, Kilauea. Yeah. On the Big Island.
And I remember doing a project on Kilauea and being like, oh my God, this place exists. It's real.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. And then
running right
everyone
now.
oh, Hawaii.
We had a bunch of VOG come in last night. We call it VOG, right? So when Kilauea or Mauna Kea, when they're running, when the lava is really flowing and hitting the ocean just right in the right spot, and then the wind is right, you get that steam, that sulfur steam, and it'll come, a couple times a year. It'll wash over here to Maui, and it'll fill the valley, and it gives you all kinds of headaches and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Ooh, weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Very cool. And if you see it, it's amazing to see. I mean, it's jaw-droppingly cool to see. But so you plan a trip. You plan a trip to Maui, and then you pop over to the Big Island, and you volcano lava flowing in the background. There you are piping. It'd be incredible.
that'd be very cool. Yes, I accept the invite.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
we'll reciprocate. You can come to Guatemala. Not quite as exciting with blue waters, but Guatemala's pretty cool. When we were offered the opportunity to move to Guatemala, fantastic, great Central America, perfect location, without tying into the fact that like, oh, actually, prices for flights not easy. Like it's not the best travel hub. If we were maybe in Panama, it would be easier because they're good with Copa Airlines and things like that. But hasn't been the cheapest to travel around. But even so, we are like, you know what, sod it. We're in this part of the world. Let's go to Peru. Always wanted to do that. Go to Machu Picchu as well.
Sure.
And yeah, what a wonderful trip! Like what like a wicked country. Peru is awesome.
Peru's
and
incredible.
Then to go back, and then I carried on to Bolivia, and Bolivia is equally impressive. Truly, it's and I often think it has similarities between Bolivia and Guatemala in many different ways, primarily through like a indigenous population, such a huge populations of the people with not like direct Spanish heritage.
Right.
And so that creates a very different culture to it. And Guatemala is quite similar in that regard, but Mayan as opposed to like Aymara or Quechua type thing. Right. So cool. Such cool country.
That's the thing that blew me away about Peru was just that it was the indigenous culture was much more dominant. Quechua was still a language that a lot of them were speaking, and being in the Sacred Valley and that whole I can't wait to go back. The food was incredible too. The food and the wine and everything. I was just, oh God, it was just awesome.
I was not naive to think, but like I just truly didn't realize that Peruvian cuisine is like an entity in itself in the way that like,
me neither.
And Thai food was, and I just was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is so good.
I think Maria and I were staying in a pretty nice hotel in Cusco, and had this amazing meal. It was just with wine pairings. It was like 5-6 courses or whatever, and it was just this high back chairs and the waiters and the bow ties and everything. And I think at the end the bill was like $90 or something like that. It's just like, what?
Places like that I do definitely, as same with you in Hawaii, that I feel a little bit sorry for, because huge tourist industry, and I know the streets are empty. Lucky that I was trying, obviously, keep in contact with people that I've met through Instagram or through piping. And I've got a friend Instagram friend who has a hotel there who's just said it is still pretty shit. Inca Trail's open up, Machu Picchu has opened up, but it's just a weird existence to see the streets of Cusco still empty. Which is bizarre, but
Where's the place that's kind of like, as soon as it's a go, where are you heading?
I have avoided that question, didn't I?
No, I want to hear.
As well as my favorite country. Okay, I'll give direct.
I want to hear both.
I honestly have no idea. I'll be honest. I have no idea what is my first country I'm going to go to as soon as like doors are open. It might be something that happens last minute this summer. And if it happens this summer and we're back in Europe, potentially somewhere in Europe, there's plenty of countries I haven't been to. And the reason why is because I'd feel more responsible with there'd be more accountability from a COVID perspective, because of healthcare industries and things like that. Like I haven't been to Andorra. Okay. I haven't been to Romania, Bulgaria, loads of wonderful places in Europe still to visit. Places that I really, really, really want to go to and high up on the list just from an adventurous perspective. Iran, 100% Iran. DRC, I know that's a bit of a weird one, but Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh no, I understand. It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful place, riddled with problems for various reasons. And I think, part of my travel is not just to obviously tick them off, but to maybe shed a bit of a different light. I'm not the only one doing that, but like I think the more people that do that for many of these countries that have a one-dimensional perception of them, the better. And then South America, Colombia. I've never been to Colombia before, so I'd love to go.
God, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I'm so excited for you. Like I'm so excited for the whole kind of adventure, man.
Yeah, there definitely isn't a time limit. I mean, one question I did always used to get asked was, when is this going to be completed by? And when I started, I first thought, okay, wonderful to get it all done by the time I'm 30. I'm now
When you say done, you're meaning pipe in every country in the world.
every sovereign nation, and that would have meant it was a 6-year long journey, which is pretty speedy if
That's
you think
really
about
speedy. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the journey has changed. Like we all grow up, and every year, every month. So I'm a very different person now than I was when I was 24.
Yeah.
And when I created, I'm even sometimes cringe at the name of like the title that I call myself, the first piper. It's an
Too late.
affirmation.
Too late.
How
Done.
cocky of me. How cocky of me. Yeah. But I can be the last piper. I don't care.
Right.
To go to every country in the world. It's going to be a lifetime journey. If it takes me 50 years, awesome. I don't want to rush it. No way.
Yeah.
And I think travel will be very, very different in a post-COVID world. Well, we'll never have a post-COVID world, but in a 2022 world onwards.
Sure.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how we'll adapt and how travel will change.
Is there a favorite country? I mean, that obviously 105 countries. There's probably more than one, but like, what is the one where that stands out for you?
It's not just one. It often is always the one I've recently been to or had like a really positive relationship with, or if I've just created a video about a country, I'll be like, oh, that really was a lovely trip.
Right.
I suppose a good measure is what are the countries that I have been back to already and revisited and want to continuously revisiting.
Yes.
And the one country that always comes to mind is Mozambique.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What about Mozambique? Like, I mean, because there's a country with some problems too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose every country has problems, but yeah, that one, Mozambique, is an interesting Southeast African country from its historical perspective, ethnic issues with regards to right now, ISIS. There's huge issues in the north of Islamic extremism. So it's not exactly, if you talk it from a safety perspective, the easiest place to travel around. It's just such an incredible place. Like the history is amazing. If you go back to the 70s, it would have been a top beach destination for South Africans. But then end of 70s was the Civil War, and that threw it into total disarray.
Right.
And it tends to be forgotten, I think, not forgotten, but overlooked from English-speaking travelers. And I think the reason why is because if you're going to that part of the world, often you'd go to South Africa, which seems to be the dominant force in that part of the world. Or you go to neighboring countries, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, Namibia even, which is cropped up as a very popular place to go to. But Mozambique's just wonderful. Truly the best beaches in Africa, 100%. Some of the best food. And if you are English speaking, you might not be so familiar with the history. And for me, that always tends to be more interesting because it's so different and unfamiliar that I find the trips and journeys to places like that are so much more rewarding, because I'm like, wow, I had no idea that it was a former Portuguese colony. I had no idea that X, Y, and Z, this many languages are spoken there, or there's so many things. Like it used to be a center of cashew nut production. I love my facts and I love travel facts and things like that. So like,
no, I'm the same way. Yeah. That's my favorite thing. And my kids are, they're kids, so they don't necessarily know why dad wants to just like sit and stare at this like plaque that's stuck on a building or something and go, this is amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Mozambique for me is just that. And I think there's a lot of potential there, I hope, in the future if the government can sort themselves.
Was it St. Augustine? He said that the world is a book and those who don't travel only read a page, right? And that when you begin to read that whole book and you're still loyal to your countries, you're still loyal to your families and where you come from, but you start to see the world in just this kind of much larger perspective. There's a little bit of grief that always creeps in for me. Do you experience that at all?
For sure, because like it's grief, a frustration too. I mean, and I'm slightly guilty with it too. Like the aim is to go to every country. Like, what does that even mean?
Sure.
Like countries and the concept of countries is a very a modern thing in the history of mankind.
Right.
What is a border? And even that frustrates me because you're like, there's so many people that aren't represented or don't have voices.
Sure.
And why do we group them by countries? Why don't we group them by cultures? But then that has its own can of worms as well. So the more you visit, the more you travel, the more stories you hear, the more stories of plight, sadness, but then also balanced by lots of happiness too. So there is a bit of grief that comes in there as well. And as time goes on, guilt too. Like, should I be flying so much? That's flipping privileged. Well, everything I'm doing is very, very lucky. I'm able to do that because of the color of my skin, the passport that I have, things like that. So there's so many emotions that kind of crop up, and the more that you think about it, the more you're like, oh, should I be continuing this journey? But then it is, like I said, very much balanced by like the happy stories, the individuals that you meet, and that there's cliches that are true, that the majority of people out there are just nice, lovely people. Like
Yeah.
the world isn't a horrible place.
Right.
I think it's mostly a lovely place. And
Yeah.
the more that you can push that agenda, those stories, the better, really. Because then we see other people who speak different languages, believe in different things as just like friends, not foes. And those
Yeah.
things that do culturally divide us don't need to be like reasons to keep us apart or actually to have divisions between us. Yeah.
Right. Well, listen, I'm going to ask you one more thing then. I know that there are stories that when you're hanging out with your friends, you know, that you just, there's got to be a story that you've told many times because it was that kind of magical or amazing or funny or whatever. I would love to hear one of Ross Jennings' top stories.
Okay. I always feel guilty because I always do share this one story.
I know that. No, I'm a travel guy. I understand. There's this one story that you just keep telling over and over again.
And it has been embellished.
As every good story should.
There's no such thing. Wait, no, what's the saying? Never let truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said.
Unless you're a politician or a journalist. No. Okay, so Tunisia, let's start with that. Tunisia is the first country that I went to. And like I said earlier, ticked so many boxes from the travel perspective when it came to kilts, bagpipes, etc. When I was in Tunisia, it was a year after the Arab Spring. And that meant that the dictator, the former dictator that was there had been overthrown. The country was in a bit of disarray. There was very little public transport. Stuff wasn't happening. So I figured the best way to get around is to rent a car. I'd never driven on that side of the road and in North Africa as well. So I'm like, shit.
it takes some getting used to. Yeah.
Takes some getting used to it. And it was just one disaster after another. My friends thankfully helped me rent this car from, I think it was like Sunshine Travel or something.
You are talking about driving on the right side of the road, the correct right side. Yeah, just so we're clear.
The correct side of the road, or yeah. So we rented this car. It was a little Renault, and I just rented it, and we parked in the center because we were going to stop off at a bakery or something. A friend wanted to pick up some bread or something in the center of Tunis. Got out of the car, didn't realize we'd left it where we shouldn't have left it, like on a red line or yellow line or whatever. And we go into the bakery and come out, and the first thing that happens, we think it's like this car's being towed down the road. And I was like, what are we going to do? My friend was like, chase that car down because we will never see that car again. So I like drop all my stuff, and I've got my bagpipes and kilt in hand. I don't know why. I didn't drop my stuff. I should have dropped my stuff, but I was like running down the road, and it was just the most ridiculous scene. My friend was like, I wish I'd captured this. Tartan flailing behind you. And I chase them down. I'm like, stop. And eventually they stop. I get my car back, and I'm like, okay, thank goodness. Let's hope that's the only issue I have with my car. Nope. Next day, I leave Brighton early and I head south to go to a town that was called Mahdia, I think. And in Tunisia, whenever you went through a town, there'd be like a police checkpoint on the going in and going out. I think it was because of issues with neighboring Libya, and they were just trying to be vigilant with who was coming in and out of the country and going towards the capital.
Sure.
Anyway, so me being very friendly, and I mean, I'm not scared of police in the UK. I was giving them a wave and you're pretty friendly, but obviously some parts of the world you just don't do that.
Right.
And I'm leaving a little town, dusty town, and there's a police roadblock. I kind of wave to the police when I shouldn't have done because that draws attention to me. And they step into the road, beckon me to the side. And then I was like, I don't speak English, French, or Arabic, French, or Tunisian Arabic. So I'm like, okay, what do I do now? They come to the window saying all this stuff in Arabic, and then obviously French too, because they assume I might speak French. No idea, apart from words like problème and passport. So like I hand my passport out, they look through it and they get mad. They kind of talk to each other very quickly in Arabic or Tunisian, beckon to me to get out the car, snatch the car keys out of my hand, and then they start going through my car, looking through all different things. They get to the glove compartment, see the car registration documents, and they read through them all in Arabic. I have no idea what it's saying, but they get to the date, and the date that I could see because it was written 2012, but I was there in 2014. So I was like, is this car registration out of date? I had no idea. So at that point, they start getting really mad, screaming at me in Arabic. And if you've ever had anyone scream at you in Tunisian Arabic, terrifying. Terrifying.
Sudanese Arabic, I've had that happen.
There you go. Yeah. So they go to the boot out of the car, the trunk of the car, make me take out all my bags, and I have to go through everything. And at this point, I'm thinking, should I have maybe slipped them a note? I've never bribed someone before. I don't want to. I don't know what that's going to lead to. Go through everything. They get to my bagpipe bag though, and I open it up, and their demeanor totally changes. They freeze, and they're like, "Huh, Mezwid?" Now, luckily, I had learned one or two words in Arabic, like Shukran, thank you. Yalla, let's go.
Right.
And mezwid, which means bagpipes in Tunisian Arabic.
Okay.
So they point at my bagpipes and they go mezwid. And I'm like, yes. And they go yalla, meaning come on, let's go, let's hear it. So I'm like, what? On the side of the road? And they were like frosty and no smiles, yalla. So I assembled my bagpipes and put them together. And honestly, as I start to play, they lose it. They're like, yalla. They like slap their legs. They're clapping around me, going like, mashallah, alhamdulillah. Suddenly they're my best friend. They're like patting me on the back. And I'm about to head off because everything's all good. They're like helping me pack my stuff up. No problems. And before I go, they're like, wait, photo. And they capture this hilarious photo with me looking like so awkward between them. They've got these big guns and they send me on my way. And that's that evening when I found out that the national instrument of Tunisia is the bagpipes.
Oh my gosh.
I was so confused. I was like, what was the positive? Why was it so positive? And it's because Tunisian people love the bagpipes.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
So that was a long way.
The bagpipes saved your ass.
They saved my ass. And it carried on happening. Every time I had an issue with the police person, I'd be like, stop, go to the back, bring out the bagpipes, and then be like, whoa, play a song. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Ross, look, man, that's it. That's the Voyagers podcast. That was wonderful. Really appreciate you spending the time and man, wish you all the best in your travels.
And thank you so much for having me on. Honestly, very flattered. And I look forward to making it to Hawaii one day to visit all of you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for wearing the Scottish football jersey too. Speak soon, okay?
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah.
The Voyagers podcast is produced by Sugarsled Productions in Kula on the island of Maui. It's hosted by me, David Glenn Taylor. We're excited to see where Ross goes next. You can follow his adventures on his YouTube page and Instagram as well as his website. He goes by the username The First Piper across those platforms. It's awesome stuff. You should really follow. The photos are beautiful. The music's just lovely. And Ross, we sincerely hope to see you in Maui someday soon. Thanks for being a positive light and sharing your gift with the rest of us. Speaking personally, it has inspired me to set some big goals and see where it can take me. Cheers and aloha, my friend. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It's really appreciated. You can support the podcast through Patreon by going to VoyagersPodcast.com and clicking on the Patreon link. And if you'd like to sponsor, email us at david@VoyagersPodcast.com. Next week, at long last, we have one of the world's foremost experts in the fields of artificial general and superintelligence. His wife gave birth just a few weeks ago, and I was able to ask, among other questions, how does an expert on AI view the birth of a brand new human? His answers are surprising and enlightening, and I'm really excited to present my conversation with Dr. Ben Goertzel. That's next week on the Voyagers Podcast. Mahalo for listening, friends.